Hello again, everybody. This is CJ here, your local friendly technology addict, and you're watching a Tech Addict's Addict short. At the moment, you're actually watching the output of GQRX on my Linux workstation. Very, very old, very, very slow Linux workstation, but it's still usable. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what we see here, this is what they're calling a waterfall display. All of the, well, I shouldn't say all of the, but amateur radio community, shortwave listening community, scanner, police scanner listening people, all of the software-defined radios have the ability of having this kind of a display. And what we're looking at is the comparison of frequency and signal strength. So like this one here in the middle is a very strong signal versus over here where we have a weak signal. But you're seeing the combination of frequency, higher frequency to the right, lower to the left, versus signal strength. And then those signal strengths, while they are simply an XY graph on this top section here, the spectrum analysis, down below in the waterfall display, it's actually the color and, I want to say brightness, but that's not the right word, but the intensity, the color and intensity of the pixels is an indication of strength. So we can take frequency, strength, and brightness across time. So as you see, you have this thing here, and then it just kind of, scrolls down. These horizontal lines, of course, are going across the entire spectrum. Those horizontal lines are lightning strikes. Yes, it has been storming here. And the storm is already dying down, but this is like take 8 of this video. I won't go into the details of why I keep having to redo it, but basically, I started out in the HF bands, but this SDR dongle is cheap, and GQRX can't quite interface with it properly, so I have to stop the playback. If I want to go from HF to VHF listening mode, I have to stop the playback, change a setting, close the app, unplug the dongle, wait a moment, plug the dongle back in, reopen the app, and then hit play. Kind of a production just to change frequencies, right? But it is what it is. I was trying to demonstrate a couple of things and wound up losing a video because of it. So, anywho, we're looking here at roughly 31 megahertz. And we have about a 3 megahertz bandwidth, so we're about a meg and a half below and a meg and a half above. So we go from really 29 and a half up to 32 and a half roughly. And I can zoom in if I want to, but it really doesn't serve the purpose of this video at all, except to demonstrate that I can zoom in. But it doesn't matter if I zoom in or not. If a lightning, like that one there, if lightning strikes, you still see it go all the way across the band. All right, so 30 megahertz. Well, it doesn't matter if I'm looking at 30 megahertz or 130 megahertz. I'm going to wait for a lightning strike here. We'll see one here in a second, I'm sure. While we're waiting, even as cheap as this dongle is, it's seriously useful if you're interested in shortwave listening, or there's a lightning strike, or if you're interested in listening to like this here. This is airband, so that's an AM transmission. If I were to tune this to AM and listen to that, you'd probably hear some guy in an airplane talking, or maybe some lady in an airplane talking, or it could be a ground, not ground, but an air control tower or something like that. 330 megahertz. Let's go up here and see what we find. Storm's pretty much dwindling down now. And the funny thing is, when a storm passes, I've noticed that the lightning doesn't show up as well anymore. And that makes no sense to me. Because when it's approaching, you can still see the lightning strikes pretty sharply. Maybe it's just my imagination. But honestly, the storm has already passed, so it stopped raining, and I'm barely even hearing any thunder anymore. But I just wanted to demonstrate that, show lightning strikes on, oops, went too far. Showing some lightning strikes on SDR. And for once, I've got an actual short video. Now, if you guys are interested in doing this kind of thing, I'd recommend starting out with something a little bit better than the $25 one. But, you know, if you don't have the money to throw at something you've never done before, the $25 one will work. Because that's all this one is. I'm hearing some more thunder. I'm going to see if I can pick it up here in the 300 megahertz area. And all of this is just with a piece of wire that I've strung up over my roof. I've got a piece of television coax, which of course is 75 ohm. And the SDR is meant for 50 ohm, but it doesn't really matter when you're receiving, and that's all you're doing is receiving. I mean, it does, but for this, it really isn't that big of a deal. That's lightning there. I don't know if you guys can see it. So yeah, it'll show up a little bit better at the lower frequencies, it seems. But it could be a fun little hobby. You could get into listening to the local amateur radio operators, or get into some kind of shortwave listening. That's lightning there. Let me get it down into the frequency range. We can actually see something. You get into listening to some local emergency services, ambulances, taxi dispatch. It interests some people more than others, perhaps. Maybe if you just aren't interested in television. I know I'm not. All the garbage they've got on these days, but starting to show my age. So I'm pretty sure that was lightning there, but not the ones below it. Well, I think we're done for tonight. So until next time, this is CJ, your local friendly technology addict, signing off.